Maybe you'll come over.
Yeah, this goes out to my nigga Lilo and the Trig Posse. Break the lock, nigga.
All right. What's up, everyone? Sorry, I'm actually I'm super late. Whoa. Super late to my own show, man. Hold on, let me just tweet this out. We're just gonna, man, it's kind of late, but I wanted to cover this really informative essay that I discovered. It's valuable. It's like 16 pages too. It's not even long. One more link here. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. I gotta do some marketing here. Sorry. Just kidding. Thanks for hanging out. If anyone is up this late, comfy but informative stream coming up here. One could even call it important, right? Because we've talked for a very long time about just how long this plan, this takeover plan, the final revolution, how long it's been in the works, right? This transhuman coup d'etat, how long it's been in the works. It's been in the works for a long time. Of course, like nobody has an exact date. Nobody sat there and necessarily declared like today on October 22nd of whatever year. I mean, in a way, yeah, numerous factions have declared, you know, their organization's founding on a particular date, but like, you get what I'm saying, right? Well, this, I decided to make a video about because I was thinking about it. I'd read into the Fabian Society or the Fabians before, but it wasn't until I was watching Dyer yesterday, and he's been doing like a phenomenal breakdown on Milner-Fabian conspiracy, right? He analyzes those big hulking books. I have yet to analyze anything more than like 200 pages. It's fucking crazy, but it's fun to do it, right? So I don't want to underestimate the importance of this group. And in fact, if, like I said, if we've been talking about how far back this plan, this revolution, whatever it might be, whatever you want to call it, the final revolution, the takeover plan. Well, the Fabians were the late 1800s, guys, right? So that's a very, very long time ago. Let's think about the writings of H.G. Wells, which I've covered here on the channel, which, by the way, rockfin.com/MemoryHold and MemoryHold 5.0 on YouTube if you want to watch those. But New World Order, his book, right, which was, I think, like 1940s. Open Conspiracy, he wrote in like fucking late 1920s, I think, laying it all out, right? So we have to go back in time to sort of the origin of this mindset, the origin of this spark, right? That is seemingly in the last I always say it's difficult for me to tell because I only really started researching in the way I do now in 2016, right? So 6 years is a long time, but not really in the grand scheme of understanding the framework of all this geopolitical bullshit, this nonsense, this riffraff. You understand? Um, so, needless to say, we're going to be covering this, just to get to the point, we're going to be covering this essay. It's called, let me just pull that up for you. All the show notes are in the description, guys. Yo, I put effort into getting the show notes together for you, giving you the sources. Always read the description of the videos, guys. All my links are there. The Cointree link, all of my video links are there. I've got the essay downloadable, the PDF for you down there. So it's in the Substack link. I also put it in the chat. If it's not in the description quite yet, as a matter of fact, it might not be. Check back in a little bit, or just check the live chat. Scroll back and you'll see it. It's called The Fountainhead of the Socialist Conspiracy, and it's by, what's this guy's name? Eric Butler. Now, I didn't know much about this guy, Eric Butler, okay? I'm not going to say like I read a lot of his other works. In fact, I haven't at all, never heard of the guy until I just stumbled on this essay, right? Because since I heard the Fabians mentioned, I was like, you know what? I've never done a video on it. Let me look up like maybe some books to read or something like that on the subject. And this is fucking brilliant. Now, Eric Butler is kind of funny. Once again, links in the description. Eric Butler is, of course, he's an author, but not only is he an author, but he's an anti-Semitic super soldier. Anti-Semitic super soldier. That's at least how he's described here on Wikipedia. You know, it's just a little about him, right? So how credible is this, dude? I mean, from what I can tell, everything checks out. All the information is sourced in his book, so this is a really good source of information. It's about as condensed as you can make the Fabians. Anyway, Eric Dudley Butler, he was an Australian political activist and journalist. He founded in 1946 the far-right Australian League of Rights, and he led that group until '92. He was known as a staunch anti-communist and virulent anti-Semite. He died in Victoria in 2006. Anyway, I haven't really seen, for instance, on this Wikipedia page, there is no debunk of his work, right? There is no grand, but professionals say, you know, all of his books are bullshit. It's because they're not, right? All it is, let's go back to a picture of this essay. It's an outline of the associations that the Fabian Society has, right? It's not necessarily laying out specifically theories or speculation about it, but rather it's literally just laying out what they themselves say, as we have been doing here on this channel through analyzing the books of H.G. Wells, of Julian Huxley, Aldous Huxley, things like, what was I just reading again today, which is a must-read too, Quiet Weapons for Silent Wars, or something like that. Maybe the other way around, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. I always mix that up. So without further ado, guys, please hit the thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Just share this video in general. That would be a huge help, and also help me rebuild on YouTube. Despite the censorship, I do want to see if we can get back going over there, just for the sake of hopefully reaching some audiences that are uninitiated, right? Even if they're resistant to the ideas at first. Oh, by the way, note the thumbnail behind me. Over there on the left panel is the logo for the Fabian Society. You see the F and the S, but what is that logo? Thought this was interesting, right? This is why symbolism is always important to take note of, because the keen eye, like you or I, would see that their logo is literally wolf in sheep's clothing, right? Well, that describes the very nature of the Fabian Society and how they operate. Like I said, this has been going on. The Fabians are from the late 1800s, but we've also heard echoes over time from even the 1700s about the idea of a scientifically driven, maybe not scientifically driven, but a centralization of society, collectivized global societies through the, combating the climate, combating overpopulation. In other words, a lot of thinkers, even as far back as the 1700s, were thinking along the lines of the Huxleys, the Wells, the Fabians, by thinking, there's going to be a lot of us in like 200 years. Like, we should probably control the world and stuff to prevent catastrophe. So, like I said, these ideas have long been in the works, but it's important to note that this is from the 1880s, and it describes exactly wolf in sheep's clothing. Well, sheep look docile, unsuspecting, right? They don't look very dangerous. Well, the Fabians kind of emulate that exact characteristic, that trait, because they are dangerous, but you would never they would never appear to be, because they aren't advocating for violent revolution. Remember, they're echoing the likes of H.G. Wells in this, and vice versa, because H.G. Wells was also a Fabian at one point in time. He just, I don't know what it was, there was some riffraff between them. He couldn't control the Fabians control him or something. He was openly critical of the Fabians in the end. I guess he disagreed with them on a lot of stuff, but he was a Fabian nonetheless, and we know about his world socialism, calls for world socialism, top-down, centralized, one world political control grid system, right? And he's made a lot of predictions that have come true, but they write about the Fabian's tactic, which is called permeation, I think it's called. Is that what it is? Yeah, permeation. Is that right? Yes, permeation. So this is the idea of gradual infiltration and subversion from within. Permeation, right? So let's just review the actual definition, right? Let's touch upon why it's exactly named that way. In physics and engineering, permeation is the penetration of a permeate through a solid. The act of permeating, or the state of being permeated, passing through, spreading throughout. The movement of a fluid through a porous, or yeah, okay, so you guys get the idea, right? Gradual infiltration. Look at the academia sector, right? Look at every sector, but academia specifically, where it's like there's a true before and after, like this infiltration become really successful. And that's exactly their plan. Haven't we talked about the multi-generational aspect of this? Vast genealogies engaging in this, where grandfather, father, son, and his son continue this as their life work, always furthering the plot, always taking steps towards that, right? Knowing it won't be in his lifetime, might not be in the next lifetime either, might be 5 lifetimes, 10 lifetimes away. And one of the opening acts to all of this, the major strides forward to a collectivized world, of course backed by technology and scientifically driven, is the Fabians. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. I really appreciate you stopping by. We'll see if we can get through a good chunk of this. Every page is gold, guys. It's so fucking funny because there's so much gold in this that I basically should have highlighted the whole thing. Like, look, there's barely any text that's left unhighlighted. So it's like, should just read the whole thing, you know? So, all right, here you go. So he starts off by talking about one of the most notorious Fabian socialist theoreticians, and that would be Professor Harold J. Lasky. Now, this guy has a colorful fucking career, like career in general and a life in general, man. Take a look at this guy, Harold Lasky. 1893 to 1950. He was an English political theorist and an economist. He was active in politics and served as the chairman of the British Labour Party from 45 to 46. And he was a professor at the London School of Economics from 1926 to 1950. So I want to just make note here that the London School of Economics is a major focus of the essay we're going to be talking about here in a moment, because the author, Eric Butler, focuses on the London School of Economics as being either straight up, maybe not created by the Fabians, but sort of like a meeting house for them, like an HQ, like a rallying point, a place that's heavily permeated, infiltrated by the Fabians, and is assistantly existing only to roll out their agenda and their plan, which you're going to see here in a moment, if I'd hurry it up and actually get to the essay already, but it's good context. So anyway, he first promoted pluralism. He emphasized the importance of local voluntary communities such as trade unions. After 1930, he began to emphasize the need for a workers' revolution. Yeah, this is the spice. After 1930, he began to emphasize the need for a workers' revolution, which he hinted might be violent. Okay, so like H.G. Wells around the same time, H.G. Wells is calling for a global revolution, not by force, but a open conspiracy, but it's a silent revolution, a revolution of thought, of intelligence, a revolution, a radical undoing and rebuilding of the very way that thoughts transpire within every human, right? We need to revolutionize the way people think and move it from like an individualistic type of situation, and instead move it to a global collectivized outlook, perception, right? That being just one example. Wells, though, was insistent that like it doesn't require, he never said like it shouldn't. He just said that this type, where we're going, we don't need flipped cars, is what he said, or fires or something like that is what he said. But I guess Lasky, who, once again, both Fabians at one point in time, both socialists, he just straight up says, yeah, we need a workers' revolution. He agrees with Wells. However, he hinted it might be violent. So again, these people, and you're going to see again, another element of that in here, in this essay, where they talk about the Fabians' willingness to commit acts of evil, one could say, so long as the end point is righteous. Lasky's position angered labor leaders who promised a non-violent democratic transformation, so Lasky was too radical. Lasky's position on democracy threatening violence came under further attack from Prime Minister Winston Churchill in the general election of 1945. And they, oh my God, the Labor Party had to disavow Lasky. So anyway, fast forwarding, Lasky is also a open Zionist, right? Born to a Jewish family, Lasky was also a supporter of Zionism, and he supported the creation of a Jewish state. I'm reading from Wikipedia here. Sorry about that, guys. I had the thumbnail still up. So just reading from basic context, basic Wikipedia, being as this is who we're going to be talking about here. There's one more thing here. So he's a proponent, Marxism, believed in a planned economy based on the public ownership of the means of production, blah, blah, blah. Okay, one moment. There is something important here, maybe not. Oh, that's right. He calls Catholicism, he basically thinks it's impossible to make peace with the Roman Catholic Church. He says, it is impossible to make peace with the Roman Catholic Church. It is one of the permanent enemies of all that is decent in the human spirit. He viewed traditional Jewish religion as restrictive. Very interesting, guys. Okay, let's continue then. Once again, please like this video, share it with your friends. I'd really appreciate it. Hit the look at the links below, guys, in the show notes. You can download this essay for yourself. I think it has my annotations, though, so my bad. So, sometime in 1946, Lasky paid a visit to Soviet Russia and had discussions with Stalin. After these discussions, Lasky made the public declaration that, quote, English socialists and Russian socialists were approaching the same objective by different roads. And I thought that was just a basic observation, but it's true because of all these different entities that come up frequently in different conspiratorial musings, they can somehow seem on opposite sides of the spectrum. For instance, the two-party system. Nonprofits for democratic causes, nonprofits for Republican causes. Yet, despite their seeming differences on the surface, entirely opposite political beliefs, they end up working towards the same exact goal, it seems, if you really observe it. So this is why we know that the two-party system is obviously an illusion to keep us trapped, going back and forth, flip-flopping, right? Two legs of a single brain, right? Two legs controlled by a single brain. And they want to obscure the existence of that brain and look at these two legs that, everything's a stage, in other words, right? Teams, that team mentality, right? That red versus blue. It's just like my football games. So anyway, yeah, you see all these warring factions still heading towards the same place, right? Anyway, late last century, Karl Marx said that the British would never make their own revolution and that foreigners would have to make it for them. I thought that was interesting. I don't exactly know what he means there, though. Like, this statement was made in 1870 in a secret message sent by Marx. Foreigners would have to make it for them. So are we talking about maybe hinting towards, some sort of like mass migration, right? Like the ethnic blending of the population as we open borders and collectivize more? Is that what they mean? I don't quite understand fully. In other words, British would never make their own revolution. Foreigners would have to make it for them. So one could maybe argue, maybe I'm misunderstanding this, leave a comment below if you know what I'm talking about, can correct us. I mean, this is kind of what we're seeing, right? We're seeing a lot of illegal and mass migration of human beings across Europe, coming into the United States. And they vote in particular ways, right? That might be they vote for whomever has their best interests in mind. So is that what they mean? And they are the vessel of this kind of Fabian transhumanist takeover plan, right? So they're kind of inadvertently doing the bidding of these evil, these Fabian transhumanist techno lizard types. Maybe I misunderstand. I don't think I am, though. Anyway, this is an important part because this is the part where they straight up talk, the Fabians' goal in general. The Fabians' goal is undermining British institutions from within, and they introduce the idea of permeation. It goes as follows. But a violent revolution such as the communists envision is not the only type of revolution. There is such a thing as a silent revolution, the undermining of a nation's institutions from within. This is what the Fabian socialists set out to accomplish. Their policy was one of influencing all other political groups by permeation and infiltration. Sovietization by stealth. Now that is interesting, because there we have the gradual infiltration of all the key power positions. You take over these key power positions across all the industry, all the sectors of society, whether it's academia, medical sciences, hospitals, right? Education, public schools, private schools. One by one, and that's exactly how they say, if it has to be done, if we can't do it all at once, we will have to do it one by one by one by one. We need to populate every single major important business, corporation, and public institution, government institution with basically what they describe as men with enlightened minds. Men that have the best interests of the world at heart. That's how they describe it, right? In other words, they want more far left radicals that want a one world socialist government, scientifically created and directed, just like the Fabians. The Fabian Society took its name. This is interesting. So the Fabian Society, this is where its name comes from. It took its name from Fabius Cunctator. I'm mispronouncing that, my bad. He's the Roman dictator who eventually defeated Hannibal as a result of a policy of gradualness, right? He took his time. He didn't rush, right? And that's why the Fabian Society has also adopted what they would end up calling permeation, which is just like Fabius, right? His policy of gradualness. And he launched that in the winter of 1883-1884 under the leadership of Professor Thomas Davidson, an ethical anarchist communist. So I forgot to mention earlier that George Bernard Shaw, the famous playwright, is also a member, prominent member of the Fabian Society, extremely influential, and he also has some strangely specific things to say. Again, it's all out in the open, as Wells wrote a fucking book about, the open conspiracy, blueprints for a global revolution or something like that. So here they describe permeation, quote, "The policy of permeation soon started to bear fruit. Politicians of all parties were influenced." Again, the Fabians, and just like the iterations of these types of, the types of groups that form out of this type of thinking, they're still doing that today, slowly but surely. I feel like recently it's accelerated, or they're even more open with it than usual, but nonetheless, they are following the playbook of groups like the Fabians, which, were extremely powerful and influential, which is outlined in a moment if we'll get to it in this video. If anything, I'll do a part 2, but it's pretty short, depending on how long my rants are. Anyway, moving on. It started to bear fruit, yeah. George Bernard Shaw has frankly described the policy of permeation as follows: "Our propaganda is one of permeating. We urged our members to join the liberal and radical associations in their district, or if they preferred it, the conservative associations as well." So all sides of the spectrum, right? "We permeated the policy organizations and pulled all the strings we could lay our hands on with the utmost adroitness and energy, and we succeeded so well that in 1888 we gained the solid advantage of a progressive majority full of ideas that would never have come into their heads had not the Fabians put them there." Indeed. What have I said exactly before on this channel, right? We understand censorship as a step towards this one world centralized technology-backed power structure. But that's not exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about swaying the minds of the masses, social engineering. We're designing designing the propaganda in a way that we do not know it's propaganda, and we later go on creating certain beliefs, having certain thoughts that really stems from whatever propaganda piece for a one world government we saw a day earlier, an hour earlier, a year earlier, whatever. But it gives us the illusion that we just thought of that idea ourselves, right? Or we didn't think of that idea ourselves. We think we did, but we really got it from Fabian propaganda, for example. We picked up a book a year ago, didn't know it was written by an author that is a member of the Fabian Society. Now suddenly, someone finds themselves more leaning towards socialism, sharing those ideas, but they don't look at it as, oh, I'm a socialist. Oh, wow, that's a socialistic idea. They just think, wow, that would be a really cool idea. Maybe the world would be a lot better, a lot of a better place that way, right? If we did that. Not even knowing. Again, all parties were influenced. And they achieved a progressive majority that was full of ideas that would never have come into their heads had it not been because of the Fabians who put those thoughts, those ideas into their head, right? George Bernard Shaw also revealed how the Fabians used English Liberal Party members for their own purposes, and he goes on with this long story, basically where he shows up to this meeting. He said it couldn't be more than 20 people, 10 to 20 people. Took them down to a meeting at Percy Hall, Percy Street, on Court Road, where the late Mr. Beale was to address as many of the 10 or maybe 20 as might be turning up. I asked him to move the resolutions, right? So pass the resolutions, move the resolutions. He said that they looked complicated and that if I would move them, he would second them. I moved them, turning over Webb's pages by batches and not reading most of them. So I think what he's saying here, guys, is resolutions, something important, right? But he didn't even read them. He's just saying to pass them. We didn't even read them, pass them, right? I moved them, turning over Webb's pages by batches and not reading most of them. Mr. Beale seconded, and it passed unanimously. So I'm guessing what they're saying here is the resolution passed unanimously. All because George Bernard Shaw waltzed into some meeting or under the guise of a meeting or something like that of somewhere between 10 to 20 people, I think is what he said. And passed a bunch of resolutions that he didn't even give a shit about, didn't even read through, and it passed unanimously, right? Permeation. Even if I don't believe in that group's rhetoric, their ideas, their beliefs, I'm going to pretend I do, at least enough to belong with them and join their group. But then I'm going to pollute it, poison it, subvert it from the inside, slowly but surely. So the socialist leader Hindman, in his work Reminiscence, page 310, he wrote about, quote, the bureaucratic Fabian society which so assiduously promulgated the doctrine of middle-class permeation and high-toned intrigue. It's a cool sentence. Now they start talking about Wells here, actually. After his failure to get control of the Fabian society early this century, the socialist writer H.G. Wells spoke of the Fabian technique of permeation. Well, what does he have to say about it? He says something funny coming up, too. He described permeation... he described the leaders of the Fabians as, quote, a very small group of pedants who believe that fair ends may be reached by foul means. That's what I was remembering before. So that's Wells describing the Fabians, saying they're willing to do bad shit so long as they think the end result is ultimately good. Wells also referred to Sidney Webb. Sidney Webb is like a key member that you need to look into if you want to learn about the inner workings of the Fabians, their wider plans, and how they changed over time. Where did I just leave off? My bad. Oh, this is funny. Listen to this. Wells also referred to Sidney Webb as a, quote, incessant little intriguer. In view of the Fabian technique for destroying responsible government and constitutional safeguards, which we will examine later, it is appropriate here to refer to Wells' description of Webb's work. Okay, this is just fucking, yeah, so they say here that, Fabian technique, of permeation and their techniques in general tends to destroy, responsible government and constitutional safeguards. Remember, they're willing like Lasky, Prominent, Fabian, we're willing to commit violence to reach our ends. We'll do anything to reach our ends, even if we have to slowly permeate, gradually permeate over decades and decades, all sectors of society before we even make any large changes, right? The fuck, man, that's so funny. What did he say about Sidney Webb? Incessant little intriguer. It's just funny, man. Wells goes on, though. He says, what was it? Hold on. Oh, so anyway, check this out. So apparently, Sidney Webb was rumored to be a character in one of Wells's book. Of course, the character had a different name, but I guess I don't know how they figured that out. Maybe a reader read it, and knowing H.G. Wells's association with the Fabians or whatever, say, hey, that sounds a lot like Sidney Webb. Is this kind of like a subtle knock to Sidney Webb? So anyway, listen. After he had written his book, The New Machiavelli, Wells was asked whether the Baileys in this book were actually the Webbs, so he named the characters the Baileys in his book instead of the Webbs. Now, according to the English Sunday Express of December 11, 1927, Wells said that the Baileys were not the Webbs, quote, but only Webby people. So he says, no, I didn't make the characters of the Bailey family in my book, The New Machiavelli, specifically modeled against Sidney Webb, key member of the Fabians. No, I just made them modeled around Webby people. So it's so funny. So even though it's not her or Sidney specifically, necessarily, or their family, the Webb family, just people like them. It's fucking funny, man. Remember, guys, show notes in the description. Help me rebuild on YouTube. MemoryHold 5.0, rockfin.com/memoryhold. That would help me out a lot. If you wish to support the show, you can also donate via the PayPal, the Venmo, all that good stuff above. Or you can subscribe on Rockfin. That would be great. $9.99 a month unlocks my premium content, everyone else's premium content. But of course, you can throw me a tip directly if you find any of this information valuable. Most importantly, though, guys, none of that really matters. What I need you most is just that the fact that you're here reading these crazy fucking essays, very informative essays, with me so late at night or whenever it is that you're watching. All right, so I appreciate it, guys. Let's continue here, shall we? The New Machiavelli. Wells describes Bailey, remember, supposedly the Webbs, Sidney Webb, as follows, quote, I can still recall little Bailey, glib and winking, explaining that democracy was really just a dodge for getting assent to the ordinances of the expert by means of the polling booth. It's a mouthful. Sidney Webb once explained to Halliday that the future belonged to the great administrative nations, where the officials govern and the police keep order. Well, I'll be damned, right? It's pretty intense. The future belonged to the great administrative nations. What did they mean by that, right? Where the officials govern and the police keep order. In other words, a hellscape. Police, military, the foot soldiers of the New World, redacted. Now, George Bernard Shaw, remember, prominent Fabian, super famous playwright that won the Nobel Prize 1925. George Bernard Shaw argued that, quote, the world is to the big and powerful states by necessity, and the little ones must come within their border or be crushed out of existence. In other words, these kinds, talking about sovereign nation states, these little countries that aren't as big or as powerful or as influential or have anywhere near the leverage that, say, the United States, Russia, China does, Canada, whatever. Well, George Bernard Shaw says, and what is this really describing? Centralization, collectivization, the combining, the congealing, the blending together of everything. Thoughts, ideas, beliefs, culture, trending, words, trending, moments, viral videos, all centralized. Less variety, more drab and sterile, comprehensively, as like sort of like blanketed across it. So yeah, the world is to the big and powerful states by necessity. the starting point of a one world centralized system is likely to come from either like a body sort of like the United Nations, or maybe as the United States, being like a technically its own country, but also like a powerhouse HQ for it. However, there's a good argument to say that the real power structure really is coming from whatever. So anyway, yeah, little one's got to go, man. Sorry. South America, you're coming with me. South America, you're coming with me. Gotta do a coup d'etat, overthrow a bunch of your governments and shit. Do some drug trafficking along the way. Put in a puppet. And that way, when we're ready to blend them all together, no more sovereign nation states like all of these elites claim they want in order to save the planet. Yeah, interesting. South America, you're coming with me. Sorry. Tired of you having your own borders. Overpopulation stuff, we gotta make everybody one, dude. They just make it, dude. I took fucking LSD the other day, dude, and I couldn't help but think like that we're all just one, dude. Yeah, dude, fuck borders, dude. They're invisible. Fuck borders, dude. They're invisible, dude. Yeah, dude, borders like are invisible, dude. All right. Whoops, accidental Fabian. Just went to college, turned into a Fabian. Whoops. Smoke weed, turned into a Fabian. He goes on to talk about what he describes as one of the most dishonest pieces of writing issued by the Webs. And it was their lengthy work called Soviet Communism, A New Civilization, in which they used all their Fabian trickery to try and whitewash Bolshevism. Uh-oh. So as we know, Bolshevism ended in a lot of death, a lot of suffering. It was awful. It was awful, right? As revolutions tend to be, but this one in particular was pretty horrific. I guess they're all horrific, though. How do you even grade them? Lots of people died. But of course, it also had large financial backers in certain little areas of the movement. I don't know how deeply I can go into this because we're on YouTube right now. But typically, this is the weird thing about like Marxism or like socialism. And I don't know if it's in this essay, but they note that it's interesting because, number one, socialism or a world socialism of some sort, a one world government, could never come into being if it weren't for capitalism. So everyone thinks that like they're two separate things. And, I had heard this mentioned before, but finally I found some essays or some books that actually state that straight up. Like I said, it might even be in this. So it's interesting. It's like socialism needs capitalism as a prerequisite before it can even come into being, right? But anyway, moving forward with the whitewashing Bolshevism, the point is that they had large financial backers, and the Fabians straight up didn't come out and say. They said, yeah, there's a lot of human suffering, a lot of misery, but here's the thing. And then they go on to justify it, right? So here, I'll show you. It's kind of fucked up. No, this is what they wrote. This is an example of their dishonest methods, he writes. Quote, no one can compute the sum of human suffering caused by this triple revolution over so vast an area in so brief a time, amid the most embittered civil war, supported by half a dozen foreign armies actually invading Soviet territory. But equally, and listen carefully, but equally, no one can compute the sum of human suffering, even unto the death caused in England by the Protestant Reformation, the Industrial Revolution, and the triumph of democratic parliamentarism. So in other words, they say, yeah, Bolshevism was bad, but here's the thing, what about the Industrial Revolution? What about... And look, it's not like, once again, all of these revolutions didn't come without their fair share of misery or death or suffering or whatever it is. It's just what the writer here, Butler, I think his name is noting, is that they're very purposely dishonest when it comes to like justifying Bolshevism, because their ideology overlaps so much, and it's so transparent how, once again, like I said, Lasky straight up said, yeah, it could be a violent revolution. Well, Bolshevism was violent. I don't want to say it's an identical idea. The whole idea of socialism, whatever you want to call it, it's an ever-evolving idea, right? So it's like what we expect to see rolled out it's customizable. It's just that they customize the nature of it, all based around the same tenets, right? How do you achieve it? Class warfare, overthrow the elites, right? That's how we typically think of communism. That's one take. Or you can go the Huxley way, the Wells way, where we can have a revolution without suffering due to the advent of sufficiently advanced technology to do it without genocide. Eugenics, population management, and then, of course, the creation or the acknowledgement of global existential threats, climate change, overpopulation once again, pandemic. And that justifies centralization. Global plans requires global cooperation. Global cooperation is the advent, the creation of global networks, outfits, entities, organizations to combat said threats, which of course may or may not be exaggerated to the convenience of whomever is pushing it. So anyway, Fabians, they didn't deny that human suffering had taken place, but they attempted to justify it just as I read to you before. So anyway, they go on to mention Engels here, which was Karl Marx's great collaborator. And he wrote of the Fabians. He wrote about the Fabians, and this is from 1893. Quote, "Their tactics are to fight the liberals not as decided opponents, but to drive them on to socialistic consequences. Therefore, to trick them, to permeate liberalism with socialism, and not to oppose socialistic candidates to liberal ones, but to palm them off, to thrust them on under some pretext. All is rotten," right? It's infiltrating, permeating, gradually rotting the foundations of whichever organization, whichever sector of society. Someone named Ellis Barker wrote, "The Fabian Society is the least open and least straightforward socialist organization." Okay, so there's some little bit of some secrecy there among the Fabians. The least open and the least straightforward socialist organization. Well, that's what happens when you rely on tricks to further your goals, right? Anyway, the Fabian Society is the least open and least straightforward socialist organization. It habitually sails under a false flag, wishing not to arouse suspicions as to its objects, its objectives. Dr. Beatty Crozier has written, quote, "This process of secret and gradual insinuation was, in effect, a real conspiracy." It was, in effect, a real conspiracy. The process of secret and gradual insinuation was, in effect, a real conspiracy. Yes, that's right. Dare I say, an open conspiracy, right? That's precisely what it is. We don't need no class war for this shit, for a global revolution, boy. We got people being able to communicate and have the ears and the minds of millions around the world due to technology. We could just enslave them without pain, without genocide, right? Trickery, using silent propaganda, using deployed assets for key positions, social media influencers, never admitting they work on behalf for one of these Fabian type groups that share the same or similar ideology, trying to centralize the world. They never say, they sway the world. It's social engineering. So anyway, in her admiring biography of Mrs. Sidney Webb, Margaret Cole, herself a socialist and friend of Mrs. Webb, remember, Webb's being the Fabians, she goes on to write, quote, "Fabian tactics in general have been described as permeation," again with that word, "and until their retirement from English politics, most of the Webb's political work might fairly have been described as permeation of one sort or another. But the period around the turn of the century was really, as far as they were concerned, the time of permeation, in the stricter sense, the time when they had hopes of so working upon the capitalist parties from within as to make them socialist unawares." Damn. That is wild. What they're saying is, once again, socialism can't succeed, it will never form. This is what they say. I think Marx even said it. Socialism, he doesn't hate capitalism because without capitalism, they would never be able to create this socialistic world society that they've been so gradually working towards. So the archetype of like the communist, the socialist hate the capitalist, it's just, I never thought about it that way. Of course. So yeah, but not only do they need capitalism as a prerequisite, you need capitalism to even create a socialistic society, but what does he say? regarding permeation. They were working upon the capitalist parties from within as to make them socialists without their awareness. So once again, you need capitalism in the sense of we need to infiltrate it to eventually turn them, transform them from capitalistic thinking to socialistic thinking. But don't even tell them you're a socialist. These people talking about permeation, you're not necessarily saying, hey, I'm so-and-so part of the Fabian Society, or you are. But the point is that it's just fine, polite discourse in the attempt, always being strategic, always finding ways to imprint your beliefs onto others. And the ones that bite, I forget, there's actually a term that the Fabians used, like something like fishing, the technique of going fishing for elite minds. They wanted to recruit brains, bright minds, the enlightened people, as H.G. Wells would say. Anyone who's on board with this transhumanist, scientifically driven, New World Order type system, anyone that's on board with it is an enlightened one, as Wells said. And they basically say the same thing here. And we need to have enlightened ones all throughout different sectors of society, until slowly, one by one, the organization is entirely opposite of the way it started. Capitalism to socialism. Republican to Democrat. You get what I'm saying? So, and look at the key here, guys. All of it, the capitalists are not even aware that they're being propagandized, manipulated, tricked by tricksters, shapeshifters, lizards, the Fabians. They don't even know. How can you change your opinion, your beliefs, without even knowing that it's because of the dude you work with, that the secret crypto Fabian that's doing it? Well, that's what they've perfected, guys, with social media, with the modern day propaganda, which is more likely classified, more like more like a cognitive warfare. The war on perception, what's real, what's not, a post-truth world, as they say. So anyway, guys, let me check the chat. I think I'm going to do a part 2 on this, guys. I talk a lot. I really should have known we'd only get 5 pages in. But isn't it interesting? Some themes that we've already discussed, quite a bit in the past. Damn, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Checking the chats now. Hope everyone's having a great night. What's up, Mike? Cuts, Joker, how you doing? DB, what up? Have I checked out Dark Scent? No, I haven't. Thank you for reminding me, though. Absolute Valentine channel has some great compilations. Nice. I'll check them out. It's weird as a YouTuber. I hate even that term. Just someone that makes videos, puts them up on video platforms, YouTube and such. I don't watch a ton of YouTube. Titus Frost, I think he was live before, but I couldn't wait until I was watching him for a while, but I had to get this over with because I think I'll be busy tomorrow. So even though it's late, I wanted to go live. Yeah, Titus, and then Jamie Deluxe, Jay Dyer, Jason Burmis, those guys. Nightwave, I watch Nightwave on most nights. What's up, Mike? Red bearded pirate, DB. Don't know if Alan the band is coming over or no. He was marooned in the Twitch chat. Uh-oh, did something happen in Twitch? Or are you saying he's just watching over on Twitch? Yes, thank you, DB. Yeah, please hit the thumbs up if you're on YouTube. If you're on Rockfin, just hit the thumbs up in general and share this out. I'd really appreciate it. Help me rebuild on YouTube as well, guys. MemoryHold 5.0. All the links are in the description. I swear to God, I find it a fun challenge to find a way to rebuild on YouTube and somehow survive. So far, so good. Some say it's impossible. I'm not quite convinced of that. We're going to find out. So help me out over there, guys. Once again, you can download the PDF, that essay, by clicking the show notes. Subscribe to me on Substack, guys. I made that. There's going to be stuff on... Oh, shit. Froze up there for a moment. Yeah, follow me on Substack. I just recently made this. The show notes are going to be going up on here from now on. I'm trying to get them up on Rockfin, too. That's what's cool about Rockfin. Hit the articles tab and you get show notes, essays. I'll be putting essays up on here. I've already kind of have. still learning how to navigate it. So the show notes for tonight are here, as you can see. All right. So data dumps, literally just copy paste of mad, you know, pizza related archives, 4chan, crazy shit with no real commentary or anything. I'll be posting that. Great resources if you're looking into certain things. If I can find a way to actually fucking... Here you go. Yeah, so I've got, I did a good art and embassies pizza-related breakdown. Crazy water-related UFO encounters. This is just random, but I found a bunch of news clippings, old journals, that included some fucking crazy eyewitness testimony, and it's all between the 1700s and 1800s, like spinning wheels of light in the water and shit. It's crazy. Got the Franco Bradley sources, the guy that was arrested in 2018. Saying he was on a top secret mission to stop a virus, and it turns out he had a DOD badge. He's pretty chill with DARPA. He was part of the subterranean experiment. They build robots and shit to explore tunnels. So, the fuck. Worked for FEMA, disaster preparedness. One of his specialties was PCR testing. So what the fuck is this guy about, huh? Well, it's a long-ass document here. Crazy amount of sources. So, it takes a little bit to put that in. And then I forget which one is more of just an essay, so. Before all the video stuff, I was primarily writing. And I've just sort of let that go by the wayside, so I haven't exercised that muscle. So the personal carbon allowance, I made a video, you might remember the video, but this essay is just one that I wrote. So if you're interested in like the supplemental information, you know, definitely give that a shot. So in other words, some of these show notes substacks are going to include just me fucking ranting and typing away. Alright, let's get back to the chat. I just want to let you guys know I'm over there. Consider it. John Smith says H.G. Wells, after quitting the Fabians, denounced them as the new Machiavellians. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I was reading about how tumultuous it was. Let me turn the volume down here. How tumultuous it was between them. What I was reading was like the Fabians failed to control him. Wells failed to control the Fabians. And what did he write? He wrote a piece, a pamphlet of some sort, like the shortcomings of the Fabian Society, and he wrote it and directed it at the members of the Fabian Society, like the people that were next to him as members, you know, people he knew in person. So that, you know, that didn't really make them too happy. So yeah, I don't doubt that he denounced them, because once again, we also have Lasky, excuse me, that said, yeah, the revolution might be violent. Well, Wells didn't want that. I mean, technically, guys, if you read Wells' book, his idea of the future isn't necessarily the most awful thing, right? Because he's talking about, yes, a world, a collectivized world, a one-world centralized power structure, which, let's face it, that alone, I don't really want that. I'm just saying that, like, he doesn't call for genocide, he doesn't call for violence, which is probably another reason he denounced or didn't like the Fabians. Despite they want the same end goals, he probably differs a lot on how to get there, is what I would guess. I have to look more into it. Yeah, but he thinks that, like, yeah, we have to maintain liberty. So in New World Order, in the chapter, The Declaration of the Rights of Man, which, by the way, is the chapter that ended up being implemented into the United Nations in, I forget what fucking date that was. So this is an important book, an important chapter, because it's the Declaration of the Rights of Man in this book by H.G. Wells, New World Order, that becomes the motivation, the aspiration, inspiration of that piece of legislation that the United Nations would make by a very similar name or the same name. So this is having real world effects. Wells's ideology and other ideologies like it, like the Fabians, even though Wells ended up saying, fuck you to them, you know? So yeah, he just said, yeah, we got to maintain liberty, peace. We have to make people, you know, live on a global level, but be happy to do it. Where, like, you know, being productive and helping society is also what makes you happy. In other words, you don't have to be forced to do it. Everybody across the globe has a standardized education. We're all on the same level, right? Sovereign nation states are out of the way, which, again, I don't want. You get what I'm saying? So Wells, I guess if anything had to happen, I'd rather a Wells world than like a Fabian world, even though it's basically the same shit, though, if you really look at it. I'm just saying, like, if it's going to happen anyway, okay? A Great Reset, a Fourth Industrial Revolution, Klaus Schwab, H.G. Wells, Fabian Society world, I'd rather it be done without car bombs, rapes, radiation, etc. In other words, the way of Wells. And again, I don't want any of it. Just if one of them had to happen and I had to choose between the different strategies to get there. Right-wing groups as well have their own yeah, these little they pop up, this dialects, and you get caught in them. They have their own dialectics following after a hermetic teaching, yeah, to bring in a new world order. Yeah, it's an illusion. The free market is an illusion, right? Yeah, you know, when you read Silent Weapons for Quiet Weapons for Silent Wars, again, I know it's not like technically authenticated. We don't know for sure if it's an authentic document. There's that sketchy story. I found it on a printer from some high-level Illuminati, Fabian, you know, New World Order reptile. But here's the thing, when you read the essay, when you read the book, it's like, holy shit, like I have no doubt anymore that this is like, there actually is a likelihood that this is real anyway in that book, because it's all come true anyway. So that's why I think that's an important read, because yeah, we can't technically authenticate it. Even if you're about to say, no, MemoryHold, it's been confirmed. I don't think it has. I think it's still up for debate. Like, is it real? Is it not? Is this guy author who he claims he is? Doesn't matter though, because what he describes in it is pretty fucking close to like what we end up seeing when we really take the time to read into the mindset, ideology of where these plans came from, these groups came from, and what they're doing now, how they're applying aspects of that ideology to our fabric, physical fabric of life, our reality, our society, civilization. An illusion of free market. Oh yeah, but in that book, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, Quiet Weapons for Silent Wars, they talk about something called shock testing. Actually, go over to if you're on Instagram, follow me over there. Covert Memory Hold. I just posted a story today. Actually, let's see if we can find it. There you go. So I just posted a story on Instagram. Follow me over there if you're on there, which is a excerpt of that book. So check it out. Just speaking of laissez-faire free market illusion, economic engineers achieve the same result in studying the behavior of the economy and the consumer public by carefully selecting a stable commodity such as beef, coffee, gas, whatever, and then causing a sudden change or shock in its price or availability. Thus, you know, kind of giving everyone whiplash, kicking everybody's budget and buying habits out of shape, all out of whack. Gas suddenly went up, I got to rebudget everything, right? The objective of doing this, choosing beef, coffee, gasoline, and then causing a sudden change that makes everyone go, oh, fuck, I got to rebudget. This sucks. It's way more expensive. The purpose, the objective of doing that, doing such studies, according to this book, is to acquire the know-how to set the public economy into a predictable state of motion or change. Even a controlled self-destructive state of motion, which will convince the public that certain expert people should take control of the money system and reestablish security, rather than liberty and justice, of course, for all. So look what they just said. Yeah, shock testing. I thought that was a very interesting name. I think it seems fitting to your comment there about the illusion. The point is that we think the whole gasoline hike, right, is a result of, you know, Ukraine bad, Putin's gas hike, or whatever Biden called it. You know, like, is it though? So I wouldn't doubt that we can have these engineered collapses, right? The housing market, these bubbles, these whatever, these booms. And if you talk about putting the entire economy of the world into a predictable state of motion or change, right, it then becomes predictable. If you can get that data to see how it reacts during the shock testing studies, you then know what reaction you get from what stimulus, and therefore have comprehensive control over the entirety of either your national or international economy, right? So what they're talking about here is the establishment of society as like a circuit board, right, where everything is controlled, and the way currency flows. Let's think about the word currency. This is another thing they bring up: a current, electricity, currency, right? Electricity, currency, money, current, electric current. Sort of like traveling throughout a circuit board. Like, so the way money flows, the way the economy works, is these series of different points within a circuit board, or like a microchip, right? And you know, the little lines that kind of travel without the little circle dots or whatever. They're looking to put us on a grid system. And if you can, once again, put everything like something as complex as the economy, which people I think doubted for a long time could ever be done. I forget the studies or the the guy that really revolutionized it. Once again, he's mentioned in this book. But yeah, I mean, now that they know it's possible through, apparently, allegedly, the shock testing, putting everything in a predictable state of motion or change, now just apply that to everything else. Now with social media and technology and data, like maybe you can even simulate people's reaction without even having to actually cause the price hike of gas or sugar, right? Like you could probably simulate an attack as big as like 9/11 to see how the city would react. Would they say they heard bombs, or would they only say they saw planes? Like shit like that, I don't know, using behavioral data from your cell phone. And remember, in the NATO documents, cognitive warfare documents, they talked about how like the reason these tech elites managed to get so powerful so quick is because we didn't know our data was going to be so beneficial and there was going to be a market for it. So in other words, we didn't know that a new economy emerged, which was what they referred to as a behavioral economy, right? Sharing data that better describes a person on an individual level's behavior. In other words, to market to them more successfully. The biggest innovation of like marketing and advertising in mad long, social media, internet data. So they decided to sell it to each other. All the while, we had no idea our fucking Google searches were important. But slowly, gradually, over time, annoying ads begin to permeate our perception. We begin to get freakishly accurate ads before videos that we don't even notice at first until you start to think, hey, wait a moment. I never even mentioned that ever in my life until yesterday, and here I have an ad for whatever it is. What's up, Alexander? Yup, Brave New World. Thanks for hanging, miss. I think it was you. You have some really good comments about Detroit on my YouTube channel. I think it was you. I'm not quite sure. Getting sleepy here, so my judgment is fading. I'm losing my judgment fast. Oh shit, yeah, Belarus. Well, that's good to hear. All right, guys. I think I gotta get going, man. Thank you so much for hanging out. Rockfin.com/MemoryHold. All the links are below. If you feel like throwing your boy a little tip, a little tipper, you can do so up above. I'd really appreciate it. But first, most importantly, just thank you for hanging out with me this evening. Be sure to like and share this video. Hit me up on Rockfin, BitChute, all the alt platforms, MemoryHold 5.0, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on all the places. Twitch.tv. I'm on all the places. All right, guys. Have a great night. I'll try and do a show tomorrow too. See ya.
Yuki. Means snow, doesn't it?